Hello everyone, this is the Palm Waver, and this is how to import animations into Neverwinter Nights. It's not the only way to do this, it's my way of doing it. We're going to demonstrate it with a animation taken from Mixamo, Adobe's free motion capture website. I'm going to take this belly dance, download it, take it as an FBX binary, and do it without the skin, no keyframe reduction. I'm going to use 30 frames per second. All right, once we've got that downloaded, we're going to want to head over to Blender. You're going to want Blender 4.0, not one version below or less. You're also going to want two plugins in particular. We go over here to the Preferences tab under Add-ons. You're going to want NeverBlender. You can get this from the Vault, Neverwinter Vault. And you're going to want 4.10. You're also going to want a retargeter. And the one I'm going to be using today is going to be the Rokoko Studio Live for Blender. You can get this from their website. You'd have to sign up for an account, but it is free to use. Once you've got those plugins installed and set up, you'll have to set up the Rokoko plugin and sign into it. Once you've got that, you'll just be using the retargeting tab from it anyway. Go ahead and import your animation, the FBX file that you downloaded. Also, you're going to need a blank or base model file for the Aurora engine from Neverwinter Nights. I'm going to use ADA non-combat here. Actually, I need that imported. There we go. Over here, I'm going to uncheck everything, including the import of the animations, because you want a blank slate for this to drop your new animation onto. First thing you're likely to notice is that it's reversed. If you get animations from Mixamo, they're facing 180 degrees in the other direction. But I can assure you that's just the first of your problems. So let's go ahead and get that flipped around here. 180 degrees. All right. To get this transferred to Neverwinter Nights, one of the first things you're going to have to do is select your base model here that you imported from Neverwinter Nights itself and generate an armature for it. Under the armature helper down here, go and select Active, Auto Connect, Strip Tailing, and then click the Generate Armature button. This is going to create a skeleton to drive animation-wise the actual components in Neverwinter Nights that it uses to make the dynamic player models. Now, heading over to the Rokoko Live retargeter, we're going to want to select our imported animation labeled armature right here, and the armature for the Neverwinter Nights model. When you click bone list, a lot of the time it can get this auto-populated list pretty close, but there's some caveats to it. You're going to want torso on spine 1 for this particular skeleton. If you try putting it on anything else, it's going to want to try to like pop the torso off of the range from the pelvis area. So it'll very unnatural. If you want it sized appropriately, you're going to want to select that. For shoulders, for this particular type of skeleton here, in fact, I'm going to temporarily move it so it's a little bit more easy to see. There we go. And go ahead and just kind of move that back. And let's go ahead and take our animation here and move it off to the side here. Now, the biggest problem for retargeting it is that the rest pose is the same. Neverwinter Nights doesn't really have a engine defined rest pose. It's more like whatever your set of animations has as its default pose to return to so that the animations look continuous. And if you've replaced that, then it won't be this right here. It really could be anything. Like I said, it doesn't seem to be engine specific. This creates a bit of a problem for the format of bringing in most types of animations from the web because they do have a default rest pose. The origin or default point, that T-pose that you see when something messes up in one of your games, yeah, that's the origin pose. It's usually a T-pose or an A-pose, but the important part is when we go ahead and try to retarget this now, regardless of whether we use rest or current, right out of the box, the bottom part will kind of match up because it's not that different, but the top part is likely to go haywire. I'm going to hit Control Z twice now and bring everything back to its origin point. So assuming you've got your bones matched up here, you can always just go ahead and give it a bit of a go. You can go ahead and use current animation. And if your pose really isn't that different, sometimes this will just work right out of the box. So let's see what happens. As you can see, the animations match up a little bit below, but the top is just a complete mess with the arms actually going backwards after a little while. So we're not going to use that. Let's see here. I'm going to select the skeleton here. One of the byproducts, though, of using current as your retargeting method is it tends to go ahead and mark this first frame right here in an A pose, which that is not what the Neverwinter Nights animation skeleton usually is in. But when you do that, it does go into an A pose, and we're going to take advantage of that here. Now, you'll notice I'm returning everything back to its origin point with Control Z after I manipulate it. That's important because if you get everything off of that origin point, things get messy pretty quick. Now, for the moment, I'm going to hide a lot of the imported parts-based model, just so that it's a little bit easier to see the skeletons underneath, because we will be working with them kind of overlapping on the origin point. You don't have to hide all of it. In fact, it's kind of good to kind of leave like the hands and feet there for a reference, but you're going to want to clear your view a bit while you're working like this. And all these little eyeball icons over here don't really do anything with it. They just kind of hide it. You can get more advanced by putting things in collections and such, but we're going to try to keep this down to about a half-hour demonstration here. All right, so we've got these two overlapping skeletons, right? And one of them is in an A pose. That's the one that we've generated for the model in Neverwinter Nights, and the other one is the actual animation that we're working with. One of the things that we're going to do is go down here to this timeline at the bottom. This isn't a full Blender tutorial, but a couple important factors here is how long is your animation? We've got the imported animations armature selected right now, so you can actually see how much of the timeline is populated. I'm going to go ahead and take the end up here to about there, about 592 where it ends. And we're also going to take the start position and take it to 0 for the moment. We're going to back the whole thing up to 0. And we're going to use the 0 frame in the animation as a holder to build our own matching rest pose to make these animations work. So we've got it at frame 0 here. We've hidden a lot of the other model. And the biggest part that was broken on this was the arms. They were just all wild and wonky. So let's match these up a little bit. We're going to go ahead and select the imported animation pose. We're going to go from object mode to pose mode and select individual components of it. So we've got the shoulder here. Switch to orientation. Let's go ahead and bring it down to where it aligns with the, not sorry, shoulder, but bicep bone, if you want to do the upper arm, whatever. Sorry, it's late. I've been trying to do this a lot. Here we go. I'm basically just going to manipulate the axis a little bit to line it up with the other bone, and I'm going to right click it, select insert keyframes, and go to location and rotation. And then I'm going to go ahead and go one bone down and repeat the process. And then finally put a hand down here. Now you can spend a lot of time on this lining it up perfectly, but we're going to get close enough for this demo. Okay, get that one and insert a keyframe there. All right, so one arm aligned. Use the middle mouse button to rotate like this in Blender. If you hold down the Alt key, it'll actually lock to an isometric view. That way you can actually look at the sides and up and down from it and have it perfectly lined up. This is really handy for some parts of this where you're trying to go ahead and see if you've got the bones aligned the way that you need. And then you can just use the middle mouse button again to reposition your view afterwards. All right, that looks like we've got the arms a lot better lined up there. Let's try retargeting the animation from there and see what happens. All right, now it looks like we've got the arms a lot better aligned. Not perfect, but good enough for government work, as they say. And it looks like the legs are a lot better, but you can see some inconsistency there. They're going to kind of ruin the effect. So we're going to go ahead and take it back to the beginning again and do a quick fix on these legs. Take it back from object mode to pose mode to gain access to the individual components once again. And select each part and orient it as needed. you will get very familiar with the Control-Z undo command while doing this. There's one leg. Take a look at the other one here. All right, sorry about that. Can be kind of challenging to do this at all, but with a little bit of practice and a lot of time, you can line it up to where it's acceptable enough to work with. All right, so now it looks like we've got most of the animation decently lined up. So let's go ahead and hit that retarget animation button again and hit the play button. As you can see, the animation matches a lot closer now. So much so that you could say it's almost a one-for-one match. If you really focused on it and spent like an hour, you could match it up perfectly. But for now, let's get on to the rest of the process and go over what hangs up most people when they try to pull this operation off. I'm going to once again show the model for the Neverwinter Nights parts-based character. All right. We're also done with our imported animation armature, so we can hide that. Now we've got to go ahead and move the animation from the armature itself over to the Neverwinter Nights parts. So let's go ahead and select that armature and head over to the, make sure I've got it selected correctly here. There we go. Head over to the data tab over here. Go to the animation transfer area under the Aurora Armature Utilities. Go ahead and select your imported Neverwinter Nights model and hit copy animations. All right, as you can see now the pose is drastically changed, and we still have this A pose at the beginning of the animation. But if we hit play, we now have the animation playing on the model with all the associated parts and impact points moving appropriately. So we can now hide the armature that we made to move it over. And it's almost ready, but there's going to be a couple of caveats. First is that 0 frame. We don't need it anymore. So let's go ahead and remove it. That way, when we do play the entire thing all the way through, it will be seamless and won't have that rest pose frame that we created for it to make it work. So that's the first part. Next part is, if you're looking at it from the isometric perspective, you'll probably be able to see that It's a little bit below the origin point right now, and that's a problem. But if you go over here and select the root dummy piece, that little tiny dot in the center of it, that's the origin that the rest of the parts make their reference from. So if that changes, then the rest of them follow suit. Thing is, there's about 600 frames of that, and we don't want to do that manually. So we're going to go over to the animation tab over here, up at the top middle area. And I'm going to resize the bottom part to make it a little bit more even. Then I'm going to go over here to the selector and take it from dope sheet and take it to graph editor. And over here on the left, we don't really need the rotation. And in fact, we don't need the X and Y location. So I'm going to hide both of those with the eyeball icon. And you'll just see the part for the Z location. If we zoom in on the bottom part down here, where this animation crosses this line right here, we can adjust that by just kind of dragging it up or down a little bit at a time. And then place it where we want it to be on the ground, either clipping in just a tad bit or being right on it as appropriate for the animation itself. Now, this particular animation loops, so I don't have to worry about it going back to its origin point, but on some animations you will. The animation will walk around or travel and it won't go right back to its original spot. So in order to go and make sure that it doesn't have some sort of janky movement or positioning in the world, sometimes you're going to have to go ahead and take advantage of all three of these sliders where the character may move around a whole bunch. That is a tedious operation. However, there are some tricks to it. Say you needed to even out this area right here and make it smooth. Well, if you selected only part of it and just moved it down, you would definitely have some jank in between the two edges of that. But if you select a whole area of it and use the keyboard shortcut of Alt-O, it will smooth that whole thing out in an S-curve fashion and will correct a lot of issues with animations. That one trick when it comes to editing the graph editor part of the animation will save a lot of imported animations into Neverwinter Nights and increase the amount of range of your results drastically. All right, so now you've gotten through like all the sticking points and stuff like that. You've got your animation, you've cleaned it up, matched it, all that. Time to export it. Over here in the right area under Aurora Animations, you'll see it comes over as copied animation. You can leave it that way for now. Or if you want, you can already rename it now. We're not going to use the model file that Blender exports because quite frankly, it almost never worked in my experience. It captures the animation data, but it doesn't seem to get the headers right for working within the hack files on persistent worlds. So we can go ahead and take the name of this, change it to, there we go, belly dance, there we go. And that way when we export it, the ASCII file for the model will actually have that already properly labeled. All right, we go over here to File. Let's go ahead and make sure we've got the model itself, root at the bottom selected. File, Export. We're going to export an Aurora model. Go ahead and drop this into our outgoing file here. And once we've got that, we can find that file. Here we go. This shows up as a NeverBlender, but what I tend to go ahead and use is an NWMax export, or just one that comes that I know already working from the game itself. You can usually scan down to a spot over here to where you get really long blocks of text and find the area for the animation ASCII area. See where it's marked new anim belly dance? You can go ahead and copy that whole area all the way down to the end of the file. Might be 10, 20 or more thousand lines depending on the length of the animation in question. All the way down to this section here where it says done anim belly dance ABA non-combat. That may be different right there depending on the name of your animation or the model that you're putting it into. Copy that, find the file that you want to add it to at the end, and you're just going to paste it in. And as long as it's got a different name from the rest of the animations in your list, you'll be able to manipulate it from within Neverwinter Nights. And that's it. I'll try to go ahead and answer any questions that come up on the forums or in the comments. And happy making of animations. Once again, this is Paul Weaver. I'm the admin for Exandria. I'll have a link in the description for our Discord for the Exandria Neverwinter Nights Persistent World. Feel free to stop by. We're always pushing the limits of the game and trying to update it to more modern standards, and we try out some wacky stuff on there, and we're always content working on adding more to it. Anyway, that's it. Enjoy and good hunting.